Okay, is there anyone here who can verify that?
Yeah.
Um,
Did we share the link of the YouTube stream?
let's see. I wish there were an easier way when I'm here in studio to get the link
Okay, I think I
for
have the link.
you.
I think it's this one.
And let's see what happens. Everybody open it up and hope that we're not getting double sound. Yep, that seems to be it.
Yeah, the date is wrong, but I guess it's expected.
Okay.
Perfect.
Yeah,
So
maybe I
let
can, oh,
me.
I can edit the date right here.
Oh, perfect. I think I can also show a window.
I can update the so what are we today? We are July 3rd. Look at this. So we go.
Okay, can anyone confirm my screen? Okay, my screen should be visible, but is the font big enough? Is it readable? Do I need to zoom a little bit more?
Look at well, so it's hard to know because you're just on the main
Oh
Astro
yeah,
Docs
let
page
me. Okay,
right now. So it might be fine. We might want a notch or two bigger
okay.
when we get into things.
Let's do one notch now, and we'll see how it goes. So let me find. Actually, let me open the Starlight documentation. I'm gonna zoom to. And yeah, this week we are gonna continue on what we talked about last week. Some people were present last week. We talked about Tailwind, and we are gonna talk a bit more about Tailwind today. So let me recap things a little bit. So you can use Tailwind in Starlight. We already have documentation for it. You can either create a new project with Tailwind, or you can add Tailwind to another project. So this is working fine, but we have other cases. You may be in a case where you're using Starlight in a more involved project with a different setup, and common things that can happen is that you may need multiple Starlight configuration, Tailwind configuration in your project. So this can happen, for example, when you use Tailwind at a subpath, when you have custom pages alongside your Starlight website, and maybe you want a Tailwind configuration for Starlight. We have one we provide to you, but this may not be the Tailwind configuration you want for your custom pages. For example, in Starlight, we do not use entirely Tailwind's preflight, the reset style CSS. We only use part of it. And in your custom pages, you may just want the default, the vanilla Tailwind experience. So for these cases, you pretty much need an extra second Tailwind configuration. So what we talked about last week is potentially changing the documentation. Let me. So this is a deploy preview that we talked about it last week. So instead of just creating a new project with Tailwind and adding Tailwind to an existing project, I tried adding a new section entirely, which was at the time add site-wide Tailwind support to an existing project. So the idea was to replicate entirely this setup when you are in cases where you need a second configuration, and we gave you basically all the extra steps. So as we discussed this last week, this is a bit annoying for multiple reasons, because first, we duplicate a lot of content, and it's not a small section, and it's not super obvious what this does, and even if we improve the title, we cannot cover all, pretty much all cases. So maybe here we are talking about custom pages or Starlight at a subpath, but there are other cases where you may need to use a second or different Tailwind configuration. So what we talked about and decided was to potentially remove this new section. So this is easy because we did not merge it, and try to instead add a new section which explains a bit more that this file that we made you edit during the installation is a configuration file, and that you can have multiple configuration file. And we explain why you may need some. We are not going to cover all cases, but we just give a few examples. We explain how to use it, and basically that's the idea. So I made a new pull request. So let me try to find it. I may even link it in chat if some people want to take a look. Here we are. And let me find, yeah, free credits. So yeah, so people with us, just check the deploy preview, the pull request. If you have any comment at any point, we are not gonna probably merge this today. So if after watching this, even on YouTube, you have any thoughts, any comments, or even just want to say, I don't have any thoughts, but I think it's helpful, just say it in the pull request. You'll get co-author credit. And at least we know some people did look at it, have some opinion. So it's always helpful. So let me try to find the deploy preview. Oh, I even have the link of the modified page here. So what I tried to do in this pull request, first, it's in a two-part pull request. First, in the instruction, when we are telling people to edit their global.css file, which is a Tailwind configuration file in the end, after this step, I added a sentence describing what exactly is happening here. So this Tailwind theme config defines Starlight cascade layer order. So this is the first line. We import Starlight Tailwind complementary CSS. This is this third line. And then we only import the Tailwind style we care about in Starlight, which is their theme and utilities. We do not import in Starlight their pre-flight. So this is basically a recap of what this configuration is doing. And then I added a sentence. If your project requires additional Tailwind configuration, check out the title of a new section. So at the moment I called it use multiple Tailwind configuration. I'm not sure it's a good title, but this is what I have so far. Maybe it should be only about Tailwind configuration, I'm not sure. So this is the first idea of this pull request, and the second one is this new section. So I'm not sure if it's better if I read it or people read it on screen. Not even sure what is better. So I think I read it. So the idea is that when you are creating a new Starlight project with Tailwind, or when you're adding Tailwind to an existing Starlight project, we use in Starlight values from a Tailwind theme config, and this is linking to the Tailwind documentation, the official one. And we say it's located in a specific file, the src/tile/global.css file. This is the same one as we show above. Ideo, let's bump up the font size while we are reading text. Yes, let me do that. Okay, I think we should be fine now. Can do a little bit more even. Okay, perfect. So yeah, first we are saying that when you're following our instruction, the Tailwind configuration will be located in a specific file. And then we move on to say that additional theme config files can also be used to apply different configuration to different parts of your site. And we give a few examples. So for example, when you're using Starlight as a subpath, or when adding custom pages to your site, where you may want to use, and we give another example, for example, Tailwind's pre-flight reset style. And to create additional config files, you create CSS file, like we just showed. This is CSS files. This is what Tailwind v4 is using for its configuration. You import them in the page where you want this specific configuration to apply. And this is a sentence borrowed from Astro Docs, which is in Astro often done in a layout component, so that Tailwind style can be used on all paging, sharing that layout. And then there is a small example. So this is a new file, a new CSS file, which will be a configuration file for Tailwind, where we just load entirely Tailwind. We just import Tailwind, this loads everything, and we do not load anything related to Starlight. So this is totally different from the example we had before, where we were defining some layer order, importing some Starlight CSS, and only loading specific part of So I think I just lost my microphone again, but it should be back now. Okay, perfect. I really need to find a new microphone. So yeah, this is a different configuration file. We load Tailwind entirely. And then we say that such file can be imported in a layout component, and you can use it with some custom pages, all your custom pages. And when you use this layout, which import this custom specific Tailwind configuration, this will be the configuration that will be used. And then I link to the Tailwind CSS documentation. So I'm not sure if it's any better, not better. I have no idea. But the idea was to not trying to cover all cases where you can need a different Tailwind configuration in Starlight, but more about saying that, okay, in Starlight, configuration files are just CSS file. You can have multiple configuration. We give a few examples when you may need that. And we just show a basic example on how to use it. So of course, I'm not a huge Tailwind user, so I don't know if it's enough or expected. So I'm not sure. So let me recheck in the same time. Yeah, I think at least it's definitely better to trying to explain what are Tailwind configuration rather than trying to cover all potential weird Starlight setup people can have with custom pages or not, with a subpath or not. It's definitely tricky to trying to cover them all. So
Yeah, and if Heidi-O,
yes,
if you could expand, so when we're watching your screen in this view, so we can see the text, we don't get to see the on this page table of contents. Can you just click on the on this page so that we can see this from a structural standpoint, this is what we're looking at now, what people would choose to navigate. So also thinking of, does this create a logical flow? Is this helpful? So certainly we've got tailwind,
yes, this
and
is
we've
where we start basically here.
yeah, and we've done this on a few a few episodes now,
Yeah,
trying to get the tailwind and the starlight stuff correct. Yeah, because we've been trying to envision, okay, what are the paths and how are people going to use this, and does this site make it easy for people to know where to go depending on what they're doing? So certainly there are a lot of people who just start a Starlight site and they want to add Tailwind, but then they're not going to do anything else. They might not have custom pages, they might not whatever. So create a new project with Tailwind, I think that's actually a really short section too, if I remember it.
Yeah, it's just
And then,
a command. So basically,
yep, there you go. Um, and then add Tailwind to an existing project. So maybe you've already got a Starlight site, and now you just want to add uh, Tailwind to it. Um, that's fine. Then we go into styling Starlight with Tailwind. Because again, I think we do think that the most common path, the flow we want to talk about is, okay, now you've got a Starlight site with Tailwind, and you're going to use Tailwind, but you're not really going to you don't have a lot extra going on. So now figuring out um,
so
how
basically,
to
it's
deal with.
yeah, how you deal with Tailwind, and you can also tweak Tailwind. You can Tailwind V4 has this notion of theme, and you can tweak it. So, for example, if you want to, by default, we provide a default accent color, which is indigo because it's the one closest to Starlight default. But if you want, for example, to have a red colored website, you can change any color from Tailwind to the one you want. You can change your font. You can basically, once you install Tailwind, I guess the logical second step, if you need it, is customizing it.
Yep. And then, yes, using multiple Tailwind configurations. So
Yes,
my first thought is,
this is a new one basically.
yes, so the using multiple Tailwind configurations, that is what we're talking about. What I'm thinking in my head is that what someone is going to search for? Like, we know that, okay, if you've got these other situations going on, you'll need multiple configurations. Like, that's how you do it. So my first thought is that what people are going to be thinking, right? Like if they have a custom page, they're going, how do I have multiple Tailwind configurations? Or is that actually the solution to the thing that they're wondering about? You get what I'm saying? Like, are they
I
gonna?
totally get what you're saying, and I guess that's where me not being a huge Tailwind user is an issue. Because so far, even if I, for example, think about the various super threads we got about that, basically people just either are using Tailwind or create a new project, and they just, I guess it depends of the case, but if you take someone creating custom pages, they'll say, oh, I was expecting in my custom pages to that Tailwind works differently. So in my head, if you want something to work differently, you configure it differently.
Let's hear from some of the Tailwind users, right? Because Heidi's not a Tailwind user, I'm not a Tailwind user. So what we're trying to think is first of all, what section title is going to resonate with people. So if in fact, like the solution is you need to set up multiple Tailwind configurations or fancier stuff going on, like Starlight at a subpath or custom pages where you want Tailwind to apply, but not your Starlight stylings. Is it, as Heidi says, does a Tailwind user think, oh, but how do I set up multiple configurations? Or does a Tailwind user think something else? Where the answer is, oh, to do that, you need multiple Tailwind configurations, and here's how you do it. That if anyone in any of the chats has any insight into that, what is the Tailwind user's mindset? That would be helpful for us to know.
So let
So it's not a
me.
huge, it's not a stumbling block for this PR necessarily, but it's one thing that comes to mind whenever we document any of our feature docs. We always say make sure to think about what the user is expecting to do or search for, as opposed to telling us and focusing on the implementation of how we got there. So that's the first thing I want to think of is, does use multiple Tailwind configurations resonate with Tailwind people in a non-Starlight project, in any other project? do people typically have multiple Tailwind configurations? And is this a thing that they are preparing for?
So let me answer,
That's
read a few
mhm.
questions from chat. So we have Jumper saying, will that be a different configuration or just another theme? So this is definitely, let me go back, a different configuration, because if you check out what we use in Starlight, we import some CSS from Starlight dedicated to Tailwind, and you definitely don't want to import that in if you're not using Starlight. And also, we only import some part of Tailwind. And if you're just creating a custom page, most of the time you just want the vanilla Tailwind configuration in your custom page. So this is definitely a different configuration. But where it gets tricky with V4 is that, okay, this is a CSS file, this is a theme, but in the end, this is what they call, even if it's just a CSS file, it's called, let me find what they call it. They call that a Tailwind theme config, technically. This is how it's documented in their documentation. So it's a configuration, but it's a CSS file. You can do CSS stuff, but you can also configure Tailwind in it. You can configure the theme. You can import different parts of Tailwind. So it's all a bit mixed up in V4. And just to mention something, this is not something new at all with Tailwind V4. This is how this used to work with V3. We had the exact same issue where for a web part of your website you want to use vanilla Tailwind configuration in V3, and for Starlight on different paths of your website you just use a different configuration where you apply different plugins, for example, the Tailwind plugin, but maybe in a past part of your website you do not want to use the typography plugins. You can just use multiple configuration, and I think it has always been the case in Tailwind to be able to use multiple configuration, but I'm not an expert. The idea of multiple configs might be scary, so I guess it might be scary, but that's the only way to support such use case, I guess.
I guess the question is, if are we having people define an entirely new config file? And if so, is that only if they want to reset the entire styles? And if they just want to modify them for a certain page, do they have a theme config, which is apparently something entirely different?
But
Am I correct in?
let me rethink about your question. So basically, as I guess for Tailwind, as long as you do import something or add theme something, and they even have other keyword you can use, this become what they call a theme config file. So it's a bit tricky to differentiate, is it a configuration file or not? I guess it could be any CSS file in the middle of all your CSS file. You end up using a theme in it, and it becomes a theme config file. So, and I guess to answer the first part of the question, yes, in the case of Starlight, we definitely want, you definitely load different things. So I guess you will not do that in the, for example, in a very nested CSS file you import in the middle of a component. You usually do that in a CSS file you import near the root in a layout. Here it's called global.css. I don't know what I call it mine custom.css for this example. So yeah, it's used to load totally different part of Tailwind.
So to just kind of like loop back around to what Sarah was trying to get at is, I think people will find this if they have at least a small bit of V4 experience with Tailwind, since everything is called a config.
Yeah.
they should probably end up at the conclusion that, oh yeah, I need a second config file, even if that's a theme config, and I think they should find this section.
Yeah, but
I think that makes sense.
definitely if you do not have the config in mind, yes, I guess you would miss it. But I'm not even sure what you would search in this case. That's where I have no idea. Like
I
what
mean,
would
I would probably go like, oh, different different theme for Starlight page. That would be like my first instinct.
yeah, but technically it's not Sims, I guess.
Yeah,
So
it's
it can
just
be
because of the way
Sims,
we
but it
foreclosed it.
may not only be Sims.
Yeah,
It's tricky. It's a bit of a mess. It's
yeah.
Tailwind in a nutshell, I guess.
True. Yeah, I think this is the best we can do though, and it's also if people come to the Discord and, for example, help to hashtag support and are like, oh, how can I change styles for just this one page? We can tell them, okay, Tailwind V4 does configurations. Here's the section in the docs. You can read up on it in the Tailwind docs as well. Selectively applying Tailwind, Sarah just said.
Oh, I may have
Also a
missed a few messages in chat. Jumper is saying, I don't think the idea of multiple configuration will be how I would think of it. So I guess my next question will be, how would you think about that then? Because it cannot be Sims. If you're only thinking about teams, because this does not work. Because Sims do not allow you to, for example, unload part of Tailwind or load specific part of Tailwind for specific themes. Loading part of Tailwind or loading all of Tailwind needs to be basically hoisted to the root, so it cannot be in theme. If you're more V4 minded, which is we can assume the way going forward, then I think people will expect to have multiple teams. Yeah, I guess if you could, for example, move this declaration into the theme, I guess maybe that would work, but yeah, it's... Oh yeah, do not hesitate to jump on microphone if you want. No obligation, but if you want, do not hesitate. Just unmute yourself, yell at me, and, and let's go. Oh, you're at work, okay, no issues. But yeah, at least in V4 we cannot do that, so if in a part of your website you only want V3 imports and in another part you just want, okay, let's load all of Tailwind and do not load anything related to Starlight, this cannot happen in a theme. So yeah, I'm still thinking this title is not good because here we are also explaining what is a Tailwind configuration. So maybe you do not need multiple, but maybe you just want to, you just land here and you just, oh, okay, when Starlight, I use Tailwind and Starlight, I have Tailwind config, it will be in this file. So this has nothing to do with multiple Tailwind configuration. So maybe it should just be Tailwind configuration file or something.
Oh,
Sure.
that's a good point too. That if we are explaining what a Tailwind configuration is, and yes, we typically wouldn't do that under the heading use multiple Tailwind configurations. So we could have, so maybe what is helpful if, as we're saying, V4 configuration is sort of the way forward. That's how people are thinking of it. Maybe this is telling us we want a heading that's Tailwind, that is Tailwind configurations. And then
Maybe.
you get to say whatever you want about Tailwind configurations. And then maybe a subheading of that is, and it could even just be one sentence, one tiny paragraph. And then maybe a subheading of that is using multiple Tailwind configurations. Or we've been talking in the chat, maybe selectively applying
Oh yeah, I
Tailwind
saw
to
this
your
one. Oh yeah,
site.
this was you.
Jumper saying in the chat, it's also worth noting this stuff is all V4.
Yeah, we
This
are no
doc
longer
section for
compatible
Tailwind
with
V3
V3.
would be completely different. Yes, but do we actually say that? Maybe we do. If we go jump up to Tailwind,
I
um,
think we do.
we'll just make sure we do say that. We do say that, and because that's a good point that
We
some
do
people
not
are still
explicitly
using.
say V4, but we say, okay, you have to use the Tailwind Vid plugin. So I guess
Um,
we could explicitly mention V4.
we could say where would be the proper place to play it? Would you say, like at the very first sentence there, Tailwind V4 CSS support or Tailwind CSS V4 support? Like we could just even just boom,
I,
drop it off.
if I remember correctly, at the time, the idea to not mention explicitly V4 was that if you're a new user and just adding Tailwind, you will just use the latest version, which is V4 at the moment.
Yeah,
When V5 will be released, if we say V4 here, we'll say need to
right.
basically
Then
change it to V4 plus. But where we mention it was in the changelog for our existing users who were
right.
using at the time Tailwind V3, mentioning that Tailwind V3 is no longer supported and we only support V4. But I guess that the idea was to not mention it in the documentation. I'm not saying it's a good idea or not. Just I think this was what we were trying to do.
About that. Um, because I've seen this pop up a few times now with people in support just saying, "Hey, I want to use Tailwind," and trying to set up the entire thing. There have been issues where people have, researched online on how to set up Tailwind with Astro, and obviously a lot of the resources are still about Tailwind v3. And so I think explicitly mentioning that we only support v4 would be a good idea. Because it's not like once or twice, it's like 5 times at least. It does
Yeah,
happen a lot where
it's
people,
fair. It's fair, totally fair.
yeah.
Yeah, it's frustrating when, when a dependency updates, something else updates, it makes a huge difference between versions. And yes, as Lou says, a lot of over the years, there have, of course, been a lot of people writing blog posts and how-to guides, and they're all going to be saturating the internet and searching right now, and they're all out of date. Um, Yeah, so it might, and then of course, so there's the future proofing maintenance argument, right? If we say 4, then at some point, what happens when it goes to Tailwind 5? And will we only support Tailwind 5 at that time?
Yeah, definitely a good question. But I guess it would be easy to, even in the first few words, to just say Tailwind v4 CSS support.
Yeah, that was my reaction. And it might not be something we would necessarily generally do all the time for all other third-party things, but given that Tailwind is so confusing right now for a lot of people, um, and a lot of people haven't made the transition over. There's an argument to be said for, okay, look, we only support this one version of Tailwind. Maybe that would take some of the pressure off support. Maybe that would be helpful just to mention it up front. And with any luck, like it'll be a while till there's Tailwind 5. And then by the time there's Tailwind 5, maybe it's not as huge an update, and maybe we can support both 4 and 5. And so we would naturally be prompted to think about updating the docs when Tailwind updates again, I think. So it's not something that we are likely to forget to update. I think if Tailwind does another major, I think we're going to go through something like this all over again. And I think it's going to be top of mind, and we're not going to miss it.
Yeah. Oh, Jumper is
So
asking.
yeah,
If our compatibility package only supports v4 too? Yes, we released a new minor. Before it was a JavaScript Tailwind plugin. And now it's because they just deprecated this JavaScript plugin without giving any guidance or any documentation how to port them. You had to basically guess it at first. So, and now it's just a CSS file. So we bump up and it only support Tailwind v4 now.
Yeah, so I think my gut reaction is exactly what you said, Hideo. I think it just, Tailwind v4 CSS support in Astro projects, like we just throw it right in there.
Yeah.
It's visible. The nice thing about saying v4 is it's a digit and it stands out in the rest of the text. So just super, super clear. Well, I think I would do that, and I think that might address some of the stuff Lou was talking about. And then an alert. You want people to have an alert when they jump to the section. I'm
An
teasing you,
alert.
Jumper, but
What? The only alert I want to add is don't use Tailwind.
yeah. I'm just oh has anyone ever seen a doc site use an alert? I'm sort of delighted at how horrible that is. Picturing it now. Oh my gosh. Okay, now I have to stop or I'm going to be thinking of all these different alerts I want for every different section in docs.
Nope, no alert,
That's
please.
great. Okay. Oh, you mean aside. Okay,
Oh,
a call out.
yeah, but I guess it's the same.
Oh, that's delightful, Jumper. Jumper's like whole new category of docs going on there. Yeah, Jake, that's yeah. Oh, can we and of course
Yeah,
Lou
of
wants us
course.
to play a sound. Fabulous.
Perfect.
Yeah. Okay, so that being said then, what we've done is right at the beginning, people are going to just jump to the Tailwind section. They're going to see V4 as like the third word in the second word, Tailwind V4 CSS support. Again, as Hideo says, we can often assume that people who are new and starting projects fresh are going to be using the most recent version of new things. Like you start a new project, you assume you're going to get new things. So I think that helps. So where that came from was Jumper's point. Well, if people are thinking V4, then they will be thinking in terms of configuration, which is where we were in that section on Tailwind configuration.
Yeah, but in the end, technically, even v3 at configuration, it was just in Tailwind v3, it was either a JSON or GS file, and now it's a CSS file.
Right.
So it's still configuration. They slightly renamed it to team config file, but it's a configuration in the end.
See, there's the weird thing, right? Because the JS file, I think, is still supported,
So
or was that
it
just
is.
plugins?
So technically, what they did for v4 is say, okay, you can use. I'm talking from plugin author's perspective. What the only documentation we had was you can still use the old deprecated way of loading plugins. So when you read that, this is technically obvious that this is deprecated, and you should, if you can, refactor to the new way. But this was the only documentation that we had, basically. This was one sentence. So, and you can find on pretty much every Tailwind plugin issues about, okay, what do we do about Tailwind v4? Maybe less now, but when it was released, basically pretty much every plugin authors was asking, okay, so if this is deprecated, what is the new way? Because the new CSS way does not provide all the exact same features and capabilities. And we're still waiting for an answer, I guess. So yes, it's technically supported. You can use whatever keyword they provide to use, but technically they mention that it's a deprecated way of loading plugin. So that's also why we refactor our plugin to not be a JS file anymore.
Yeah, and certainly in our docs, there is no need to mention any kind of backwards compatibility support or
Yeah,
how
we
to
don't
do
have
that.
any in Starlight,
Um,
so at least it's easier.
yeah, yeah. There's there's an argument to be said for backwards compatibility can be helpful as people are slowly upgrading to a new version. Um, But for example, we're going to hit the same problem in content collections whenever we release Astro 6. In the Astro 5, content collections had breaking changes and it's organized differently. Your config file is a different file in a different place. But there was a lot of backwards compatibility built in, which meant Matt put a ton of effort to make sure a lot of people's projects would still just work so that things wouldn't break, so that you could update soon. But what that meant was all of our guidance, like how to update content collections and all this stuff like that, we're going to have to do it again for Astro 6 when we actually remove the backwards compatibility. So there's something to be said for not building in backwards compatibility magic in the first place. Um, yes, it's helpful if you don't have to do it right away, but it does mean there's a lot of projects in this middle ground. Like when I approve new themes, I go and I check because I want to make sure, okay, are they updated, blah blah blah. And there are a lot of people who are building new Astro themes right now. The theme itself is brand new, perfectly updated version of Astro, and I go and look and they have content collections set up the old way because it works. And so part of what I look at is, oh, so anyone using this theme now, they are going to have to go through this update in Astro 6 because of that backwards compatibility. So certainly with Tailwind having some backwards compatibility built in, we in our docs for Starlight and for Astro just pretend that does not exist. That is their decision. We do not have to support that. We should be assuming everyone is using something that's up to date. Uh, that's just otherwise it creates a whole host of problems. All right, so we have some new people who've joined us. Welcome. Thanks for being here. I don't actually know if Frayuni is a Tailwind user. And I don't know if Frayuni has weighed in on what we
I
were
guess
talking about with
for
the.
Louis, one question is Louis a CSS user at all? Because I'm sure
I'm
he
not a
mentioned
front end user
yeah,
of
I heard
I was
anything.
mention.
gonna.
I don't do UI, be it Tailwind, Bootstrap, anything.
Yeah, I remember
Perfect.
I
that.
stay as far away from all of that as I can.
For some parts, you may be right. You may be right.
That's okay. Overrated anyway. CSS needs
Yeah.
to. I speak as someone who just works in text. If the words are right and spaced out properly, all I need is Markdown. I don't need CSS. Which is why all my sites are not Tailwind, are Starlight, so that everything visual is taken care of for me. All I want to concern myself with is text and content. Okay, so with that whole thing in mind, are we happy with the section heading use multiple Tailwind configurations? This is where this whole discussion started.
Yeah.
Is that the answer to what people are looking for, or is that the thing people will think to look for? We've talked about maybe selectively applying Tailwind. Now that we know Tailwind theme configurations are sort of the standard way to talk about Tailwind for V4, does that section become, Tailwind theme configurations?
I
And then
actually have
people,
another idea,
oh, what's
entirely
your other idea,
different.
Heidi?
So basically,
Yep.
the first two sections are installing Tailwind. So you create either a new project with Tailwind or you add it to an existing project. The third one, which is technically the second one, depending on which one you pick first to install Tailwind, is about styling Starlight with Tailwind. But what you end up modifying here is also a Tailwind team config. So I'm wondering if we should not have a third section, which is Tailwind configuration, which should have two subsections, which would be styling Starlight with Tailwind, and use, maybe not as is, but something like use multiple Tailwind configuration. Because technically, styling Starlight with Tailwind and using multiple Tailwind configuration are both related to Tailwind configuration.
So we have, so now we're thinking of it as from like a section heading orientation standpoint, we've got Tailwind, we've got how to just create a new project with Tailwind from the get-go,
Yeah.
add Tailwind to an existing project. So those are both related to
Setting up,
just
I guess.
yeah, getting Tailwind in your project in the first place. And then both styling Starlight with Tailwind and using multiple Tailwind configurations are more detail on Tailwind, on configuring it once
Yeah.
you've enabled it.
So I
Right.
guess we could have Tailwind CSS, two sections, which could be setting up Tailwind and configuring Tailwind. And in setting up, you either choose if you want to create a new project or add it to an existing project. And in the configuring Tailwind, you pick, I guess it's not a choice, you pick what we need at the time. So for example, if you want to style Starlight with Tailwind, apply a different theme, you go to that section. And if you are in a case where you might need multiple configuration, you go to that section.
So when I see, again, and some of us here are not Tailwind users, but that is what makes us great at working through these docs, is if we don't know what's going on, if we can figure it out, then certainly someone who actually uses Tailwind can understand it. When I see styling Starlight with Tailwind, I actually think of like being in templating mode and adding Tailwind CSS classes, like the actual act of using Tailwind, not of configuring Tailwind.
Oh, I
I
see what you mean, I guess.
like actually, I see that as using, not as configuring.
But this is big. I guess this is the way it is because when you use Tailwind with Starlight, we basically read value from the Tailwind config, and you basically say, okay, this is a Tailwind color accent 300, and
Right.
you say, okay, this will be whatever color you want. So I guess we only read that file and use this configuration to style Starlight. So yeah, maybe it should be.
Yeah.
Because yes, I guess it's still styling, but yes, not, I guess, actively.
Right. It's more, and again, it's not to say that it's wrong the way it is. I'm just saying from my perspective, when I think of styling, I think a little more actively, as opposed to yeah, but that's also because I'm not a big CSS user in general. Like styling would be creating the style sheets, right? Like, and that's, yeah. So I walk that back a little bit. But I do often think when I see the verb styling, I think of like using the styles and applying the classes, not so much preparing the style sheets. But I think that's me, and I think because I haven't had to do much styling
I think that's
because
pretty
Starlight
much
does all my styling.
No, I think it's correct, and I think it's because most people don't choose Tailwind, will just do that. This is how it's styling. But when you're styling with Tailwind, what you end up doing is either writing CSS class name in your HTML or tweaking how some of this class name will render by modifying your configuration and your themes.
Right.
So I guess it's just
Right.
two different experience, but I guess in the end you end up with the same result, but it's just two different paths.
Yep. Yeah, so I'm wondering too. So even though we've talked about those last two sections being both related to configuring Tailwind as opposed to actually just adding the ability to your project. Um, I wonder if it might not be helpful to have so many nests so
Yeah,
that we might lose seeing that in the on this page.
I guess we should
So,
be able to tweak the depths, but I'm not sure if this page
but
will support that because it may introduce
um,
some other header we do not want.
exactly. That's what I'm thinking. And certainly two level like so yes, in Starlight on a per page we can customize like right now and the default is we see the H2s and the H3s show up in the on this page. And generally that's good for not being overwhelming. You don't necessarily want everyone to be able to see everything. So I think what I'm saying is I kind of like that there are maybe that many visible options so I'm not sure I would nest them both under configuration, even though they're both related to configuration. But maybe it does mean, as you say, Heidi, maybe it means reorganizing a bit so that like the third one is something about, Tailwind configuration. And then we can define, okay, it's used by theme configurations and blah, 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 blah. And so maybe just all that content from the last two sections, it's reorganized a little bit. So we're introducing the concept of using the Tailwind theme configurations, which is, basically styling. And then maybe there is a fourth heading which either are selectively applying Tailwind or something like that, or multiple theme configurations, but they're all available at that level. Or maybe whatever that fourth level is, maybe that becomes an H4. And if we just have one heading
Yeah,
about the configuration, maybe that's good enough.
yeah, maybe. I'm taking note at the same time. I'm gonna have to try that pretty much later and see what.
Yes, so Heidi, if you jump to the multiple Tailwind configuration section right now, because you did bring up a really good point, is that this basically tells you Starlight values will use values from your Tailwind theme config located in the global CSS file to style its UI. That feels a little more introductory
Yeah,
than section heading that we're in. So
yeah,
what that tells us is that maybe that's a great sentence and maybe people need to know that even if they're not going to have multiple configuration files. And so maybe that can rise to the top.
yeah. I guess even
So
here it could be useful to know that. So because here the only mention where you are starting Starlight with Tailwind, it's just basically this in the code snippet. So I guess having that sentence way before could be helpful.
is that even, oh yeah, located in so that sentence that was above is basically the second clause of that sentence there, just without mentioning the file itself,
You mean
right?
in
Like that's
the
almost,
styling section?
yeah. Starlight will use values from your
Yeah,
Tailwind theme config in its UI. That's
yeah,
almost the identical
yeah,
section to what we have below, but doesn't mention the file name. So yeah, maybe that sentence gets hoisted up to
yeah.
this section. Um, And then, so if that were the case, if that were the case that that bigger expanded first paragraph is actually up higher, then we would have use multiple Tailwind configurations, and the very next sentence would be additional theme configurations. Additional theme config files can be used to apply, and that feels like it belongs
Yeah,
sort of directly under that heading too.
you get right into the point of the section, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. So even without a lot of architectural changes, I think that makes that. And what that does, so notice the links that we've got there about using Starlight as subpath or when adding to a custom page. Then if we've lost that initial paragraph that has a whole bunch of links in it,
Yeah,
they stand out more,
definitely.
which I think is helpful too, because now these are because again, even the links that were in that upper paragraph are not necessarily related to the multiple Tailwind configurations. Those are the different ways you could have got started
Yeah.
adding Tailwind to your project. Yeah, so I think that makes it cleaner as well. Okay, yeah. So I think even we've talked an awful lot, and I think we're seeing only minor changes are needed here. But
Yeah, but I'm taking notes at the same time. But yeah, it's really great point you're making. So yeah, I'm just took note of moving that and probably
so what's to
merging.
spend an hour to say, oh, let's move one sentence up higher.
No,
This is how it goes.
we added V4 here too. So
Oh, right, and we added before. Perfect. Doc's team is so efficient, and this is and you watch us do this. Okay. Yeah. So, but I think those are two really important changes. So even now, so if we pretend that first paragraph there is gone, additional theme config files can also be used to apply different configurations to different parts of your site. For example, when using Starlight as a subpath, or when adding either a custom page or custom pages to your site. Okay, for sure, this sentence now needs to stop there. That's a lot for one sentence.
so where did you
And
stop?
I stopped after custom page to your site.
Oh, okay.
That's a nice full complete thought. And the rest of it is good too, but now let's have breathing room, right? Let's give
Yeah,
it its own sentence. So here now you can start another if you want, for example, for example, you may want to use Tailwind's pre-flight reset styles that Starlight only uses partially. Like that can now just be its nice own sentence. So for sure we would do that, but I think otherwise that's great because the key point is like those two major things um, that where you might want to apply different configurations to different parts of your site. We've got two links. Stop the sentence there, and it's a nice manageable chunk. And then the nice thing about starting that next sentence with a for example is if nobody needs an example, you can tune out,
yeah,
right? That tells someone, okay, they're just like explaining more in case I didn't get it, right? And you can totally zip past that. So that's one reason that I like starting a lot of sentences with, for example, because then that lets your reader choose whether they need more detail or not, or whether they're good, they got it. Um, And then, so actually, I love this structure though. Additional theme config files can be used for this purpose when creating new Tailwind config CSS files. And that's so not only is that like beautiful next flow, but I love that now in the first sentence we said additional theme config files. Here we've said new Tailwind config CSS files, which is a nod to what these config files actually are now. They are CSS files. I love how little extra bits of information and using the proper vocabulary and vocabulary of the third-party thing just subtly gets thrown in here. It's really challenging to keep sentences like this concise and give a lot of information. It's the exact same way up at the top when we decided we would say Starlight supports Tailwind V4, or sorry, Tailwind V4 CSS support. Like you can it takes work, but you can put these extra tiny bits of information in without needing to say something like, Tailwind CSS support in Astro is provided by the Vite plugin. Only V4 is supported. Like, you can just take all that out. If you can figure out how to get that, just that one key piece, if you can find where in the sentence grammatically it goes, it's so effective and so impactful. So I'm actually just really noticing, I love the structure of these sentences here that we've just sort of, we've just casually dropped in. These are Tailwind config CSS files. It's a really helpful addition, especially since we know everybody's struggling with the transition from 3 to 4. So that's just super nicely done. I love like seeing the conciseness of just like the density of getting the information out there. Really, really nice. So when creating the new files, import them in the pages where you want this specific configuration to apply. So what I will say, though, is that when you are literally in the act of creating new config files, you are not also literally in the act of importing them. So
Oh, I see what you mean.
Yeah. So what I might, if we try to think, how can we like just squish this thing as small as possible? Is it wrong to just say Tailwind config CSS files must be imported in the pages where you want that specific configuration to apply, right? Like maybe that's all we need to say. Maybe we don't need to say when creating new. Maybe we
This
could
is
say,
correct.
we could condense it like that. A word that I don't like to use, but that I often use in first drafts is using,
Yeah.
because using is so general.
Yeah.
But so it's more appropriate to say when using new Tailwind config CSS files, or when you have multiple Tailwind config CSS files. That might be a better way to start that sentence. When creating kind of puts the reader in the active at the actual, oh, this is something I need to worry about when I'm making my file. And it's not something they need to worry about when they're making their file. It's when they have these files, when they have multiple ones. So I would change the verb use there. Creating makes me feel like, oh, I got to pay attention to this as I am making that file. And this is not a concern when I am making that file.
Yeah.
Okay, so import them in the files where you want the specific configuration to apply, which is often done in a layout component so that Tailwind styles can be used on all pages sharing that layout. And I believe you even said, Heidio, that part comes from
Yeah.
the Astro Docs,
Yeah,
which we
definitely.
do say that.
Yeah.
Because we do, mostly people are going to want them imported in a layout component.
Yeah.
For sure.
This makes so much sense in Astro.
Yeah. So I would just say the nuance, like as to when someone needs to worry about this piece of information, is not at the act of creating. But otherwise, yeah, that is the content we want them to have. We typically want these in a layout file, and so that's done that. The following Tailwind theme config is used to import Tailwind without any plugin or extra configuration. Okay. Such CSS file can then be imported in a layout component to apply Tailwind styles to all custom pages using that layout. To learn more about Tailwind theme config, check out the Tailwind CSS documentation. Okay, and I'm assuming that's an external link.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks, Tim, for the for the comment. This is it's a little risky for us to like publicly do all this. We have been going for over an hour, and I think we have identified like maybe 3 little changes we're going to make to this. But it doesn't look like we're very efficient, but we're very careful, and it's a lot of work to make something short and impactful. And yeah, I don't know why my metaphors tend to be so violent sometimes, but like I really but I do like it when you're reading docs and like things just hit you in the face. Like I that is my I have to get over these violent metaphors, but it's when you see something that's just so simple but information dense, like it's very powerful. And this is what we want our readers to experience. Even not being punched in the face, but like just here's what you need. Yeah, and sometimes it takes us in very secure, circuitous routes as we go, like, really, do we want this? And then we take a whole, and we're like, okay, now that we've really gone into it, yeah, I think that works. Or maybe just with this little tweak, um, yeah, this is why Jan is my partner in docs, that Jan has all these lovely metaphors. Jan's suggesting gently caressed with knowledge. And usually between Jan and I, uh, we come out with we even out to reasonable docs. That's why docs is a team. It's a team sport. It's a team effort. All right. So we yeah, Hideo, what are you thinking now? After all of this, after we've all had stuff to say.
Good question. I think this. I took note of. Let me count. Like 7 points, and I think all of them are really good points. Pretty much what everyone mentioned is really important and really interesting. And I think I just want now to go back to this pull request and see how it looks. But I'm pretty sure it will look without a doubt way better, because I'm already liking most of the ideas. So I think
Hmm.
this will be good changes. And I
Yeah,
think
and
most
I
of the
think
time they are kind of obvious. I mean, they make a lot of sense.
I think this is great. Like if this were merged, if this were live in docs, it's super helpful. I think it's great. I think the kinds of things when we get together like this and we really like, okay, can we make this fabulous? Like, can we can we just really take a close look and make sure this is doing what we want it to do? That's really all that's happened here. So some points that that we apply to all of our docs, some things that all of us have learned with experience and over time. Yeah, so subtle changes because this was fabulous. This was great. We all understood it. None of us were confused by any of this. Um, but sometimes in just challenging and pushing a little harder, we just look to see if can we get some extra nuance? Can we make this as smooth as possible?
Yeah, and we
Um,
even know we know this is a tricky subject with Tailwind, and this is, I think, maybe the third time we are trying to document this.
I think it is.
So that's why we definitely want to take the time thinking about it, see what people think about it, what people in chat says about it, and it's always helpful. It will surely not be, because, like you said, no docs are perfect, so it will not be perfect. It will evolve with time, probably, but at least we want to have a first version that is at helpful at best.
Yes, and because we know in Astro Docs and Starlight Docs, as soon as we merge something, all the translators are going to jump on board.
Yeah.
It'll be in I don't know how many languages. And then if someone spots something after the fact, then it's just this huge cycle of activity. So the more we can, pay a little bit more dedicated attention up front, just saves a little bit of all that action going on. And it's good practice for us to to have these mental exercises, challenging ourselves, looking at everything. It also keeps us sharp and it makes us, it reminds us that there is so much we could get away with just merging into docs, like because it's correct and because it's grammatically correct. But I think we like having a higher standard than that, and we like making sure that what we have is good. And maybe it was already good, and maybe the pushing, and then we evaluate it, and maybe we don't really have to change it. But that act of doing it helps, keeps us constantly thinking along these quality lines. So that's great.
Yeah, it's amazing. Lots of feedback, lots of change. Now I want to try, see how it looks. It will look amazing.
We had dropped the link in chat. We can
Yeah,
drop
I
it
can
again
drop
if
it
need be to this,
again.
yeah, to this particular
Uh,
PR because again, we talked about credit. Leave a comment in this PR with your thoughts. They could be positive, they could be negative. You could leave a comment saying, "Oh, I enjoyed listening to us all discuss this on Talking a Doc." You could just leave a leave a comment. I thought this was great, but I'm sure changes will make it any better. Put your comments in the PR, and then when the PR is merged, you get GitHub co-author credit because you were here helping us make this PR what it is, helping us get it to its final form. And then these reviews show up on your Astro badge, which you can then show off proudly. So, yeah, we appreciate everyone being here as we go through this. And even if you think you didn't do anything just by being here with us, it makes it more interesting. Especially, I mean, Haidio and I trying to navigate a tailwind PR is always subject to us going off the rails because Haidio, do you know? No, I don't know. Do you know? I don't know. So that's why we need people in the chat who use these things, who have ideas for us. All right. Well, that was great.
yeah, definitely
You
great and
only need
super helpful.
excellent. Okay, so hop in that PR, leave your comments. Um, and I guess now we can move off of Starlight with Tailwind, and maybe we won't see this again for a while. Maybe we'll be good. But keep interacting in the PR. As Haidio says, the PR is not probably going to merge super quickly. So even if you're watching the replay here, jump into the PR and you can leave your thoughts or comments there. As for what to do next, I'm just quickly going to check my PR inbox off to the side here. Okay, nothing has been added. There's nothing new in the Docs PR inbox since we started this call. We just released Astro 5.11 today, right before the call. So I was kind of half expecting to have someone have PR'd a typo or something to that effect, and I was just checking to see if anything happened as a result to that release. But it doesn't appear to be. So if there's something going on, then it has not happened yet.
Soon.
There, yeah, we'll wait for it soon. I guess I don't think we have Otterlord on the call today. Haidio, if you want, I'm looking now to see that you have put up the
Yeah,
the changelog for the release. Yeah, this release is mostly all about adapters. So a couple of new experimental features added as possible config options to the node adapter, and a fix for server islands that apparently they were not working in fragments well.
yeah.
Yeah, so not a super huge release, but now there's some stuff going on with the node adapter. You can disable HTML streaming if you really need to, because maybe it's necessary with your deploy host. And Emma has been, yeah, as Lou said, related to CSP. Emma has been working on the adapters, providing extra support for the adapters to use platform primitives to set headers. So it's a little bit of a chain reaction here that the new features involved are actually now the Netlify adapter can access the your Netlify config and add headers to static pre-rendered pages. The Vercel adapter can access vercel.json, I believe is the file, and add headers there, because the original implementation of CSP for static pages was we're going to add a meta tag to your page, but not all content security policy directives can be added via a meta tag. Some of them do need to be added like as headers. So Emma's been working on the adapters to get them to be able to access and change headers, which means if you also have CSP, the experimental feature added, now you can use them in tandem. So your adapters, Netlify, Vercel, and Node, can now create headers, including, for example, CSP headers. And there is an open PR for the Cloudflare adapter as well. So that is coming soon. It just wasn't ready for this release. So Cloudflare works a little bit differently, but they're working on that one as well. So that's what was released today. But I don't, and so the docs went live shortly before the call started. I don't see any errors posted, so that's good. But we haven't yet advertised. We haven't done the social media. We haven't done the blog post about the release yet, because we always wait for docs to be live. Then we wait the hour or so for Algolia to crawl the live docs, so that when people come into the docs after a release like this and they just search, right? Oh, what's this new thing? I want to search for it. The search widget needs to be updated. And the way the Algolia plugin for Starlight works is that you need to have the site live published, then Algolia needs to crawl your live site. And the docs is kind of a big site, so it takes 30 minutes to an hour. And then we say, okay, now we can publish on social media, because we want people to have a good experience coming into the docs after a release. So it's really important that the entire doc site be ready for people coming in after this release. So, oh, did Chris just walk in? Chris? Chris missed Starlight and Tailwind. This was waiting until we were done talking about Tailwind. Chris is sneaky that way. All right, so yes, we literally just finished up with the Tailwind PR for Starlight, the Starlight Tailwind docs. Then I took a quick check because we released 5.11 just before the call, and I was half expecting to see PRs for typos or something like that, but nothing yet, nothing yet. And so I was just describing what was happening right before the call, was getting all that in. Yeah, so we could move to anything else. Heidi-O, do you have anything else with Starlight you wanted to look at? I think there's a PR you're waiting for the author to get to just update some minor things, but then I think is that maybe for next week that we'll be
Yeah,
able
yeah,
to
yeah,
look
yeah,
at that?
yeah.
Or is that in a shape to look at for this week?
I think for this one we may want to wait because I left not a final review but a second review to just fix a few
Okay.
points. But yeah, I guess we should be something we can take a look next week. Let me think. I'm pretty sure we can find something to.
Yeah, if there's anything you want, so there's nothing new that showed up in my docs inbox. There is this has been bugging me for a little while. If we go to the docs repo, like the issues, there is one bug that I think has been outstanding since the beginning of May. And I think Otter Lord, wait, why does yours not show bugs as a separate label? And
Wait.
I get code issues, bugs, pull requests,
Oh,
discussions, actions.
it's a refined GitHub
Oh, is
feature,
that
and I'm in
that's a refined
incognito.
GitHub thing?
Yeah, I'm in the
Oh,
incognito
okay.
window.
I see. I see.
So, do
Okay.
you mean this one?
I do mean that one. Yeah.
I have no idea what this is about. So, on page navigation sidebar. Oh, but I think we know about that.
Yes, I do think we know about that, and I think I replied that Otterlord was looking into it.
I have not looked. Oh, yeah, you mentioned Autolord is looking into this. But
that he was
don't
able.
we have also on the Starlight repo? Let me. Is it I think we have a sidebar. Uh, oh no, it was a scroll bar restoration issue. This is a different thing. So yeah,
But right, at any rate, just because it's always staring me in the face, and we have a bunch of people here, I thought maybe we'd take a look at this and see what is happening here.
Yeah, it's a Firefox only issue, if I recall correctly, and I could reproduce it. And it also is an issue that started at some point. That sounds stupid, but it's an issue that didn't exist and then started existing, and I haven't really looked into why it started happening, whether it's something we changed in our styles that introduced this, whether it's something that changed in Firefox that introduced this.
so there
I'm
seems
not
to be on the second category.
Yeah, basically, if you're in anything other than the first. So if you're on the first, then obviously the items from the first will show right away, so you're not going to see any movement. But if you're on another one, it'll show like a flash of the preceding tabs, because basically the DOM for all 5 tabs is there, right? And unless they're hidden, they might show. So basically, if you're on the second, for example, the start section shows and then vanishes, revealing the second. But I haven't dug into why. Like presumably they're not being hidden correctly. We used to have some logic that would hide those
Oh yeah, I
for like,
can reproduce. But yeah, it's
yeah.
only Firefox.
Yeah, it's only Firefox, and we used to have, I'll have to double check what we're doing. I mean, what I used to do is basically apply some CSS that animates. It's like, okay, I'll try and explain the whole flow because it's a little bit complicated. But basically, the challenge is, right, we have lots of DOM, right? We have like these 5 sections. And if JavaScript fails, JavaScript can fail. I would like, this was me who designed this system, so I can blame myself. I would like, if JavaScript fails, for you to be able to see all of those 5 sections. I don't want that, like, JavaScript fails, you now have no way to get to the other sections. You're just kind of stuck, right? I would like that as a fallback in the worst case scenario. It'll be a bit ugly, but you get a massive sidebar and you can still get around. So like, okay, JavaScript failed, but still navigate. That's the kind of goal. All right, but we don't want to. So normally you say like, okay, we're progressively enhancing with JavaScript. So like once JavaScript kicks in, we'll hide these things. But we don't want to do that because then you have this flash of shift, right? You have the whole huge sidebar shows. We had then like JavaScript loads in a little bit later, starts hiding things. That's not a good user experience either. So the way it works under the hood is we apply an animation, a CSS animation, which animates from hidden to visible over, I think, like a 10-second delay. So basically, it's an animation that goes from hidden to visible and kicks in after a 10-second delay. And then we remove that animation in favor of just hiding them once JavaScript kicks in. So that means if JavaScript doesn't load for 10 seconds, it'll reveal everything. So the only thing I can imagine is like maybe that animation is not applying for a split second. Maybe the starting state of that animation is somehow not triggered instantly. Only in Firefox. I don't know, but or maybe it's something completely different. But anyway, that's kind of the flow of like how that happens with loading of CSS and JavaScript. So But yeah, normally it should just be hidden. So I haven't dug into why this is happening.
Yeah, and it's
Yeah,
surprising that it's Firefox only. But who knows?
It's new because I'm like this. I would have like when we implemented the tabs system in Docs. I'm sure we would have noticed if this was the case.
Yeah, and you're
Because we've
using
tested it
Firefox,
really
right?
thoroughly. Yeah, and I use
Yeah.
Firefox daily, so
Yeah.
it would be. And we had lots of people testing as well as me, so it's not just that I spent all my time on the Start tab forgetting to check something else. I'm pretty sure it worked thoroughly also in Firefox, at least initially, and then something happened. We changed something in the docs code, maybe, or something like I say, changed in Firefox itself that has means it stopped working. But I didn't have time to look at why. And it's quite hard to debug because it's like a instant, like
Yeah.
few milliseconds flash. I don't really know quite how to slow down my browser enough to detect it.
Yeah.
So I've just dropped the link to this issue in chat. So of course, all these issues are open and fair game. If anyone has any insight into this, we haven't really sort of prioritized it at the moment. Well, we've had so much going on with the launch week, and then end of month is always stressful as we get the newsletter and everything together. But because I can see one bug staring me at the face, I thought I would just bring it up here and we would take a look at this. Yeah, so if anyone has any extra information on this or wants to take a look in, that's something we could totally do.
Yeah, if you scroll down again in the issue, Heidi, you can actually see the CSS I was talking about. So it says animation tab panel appear, and that's exactly the CSS. So basically, you can see that initially there's no animation. Wait, data initial. I don't remember what data initial does, but yeah, basically the idea, at least with data initial is set on the server, like when we render the page to say this is the initial tab, so that doesn't get an animation. And role equals tab panel gets set by our JavaScript, unless it doesn't, but I'm pretty sure it does. And that's basically disabling the animation. And then as you can see, we have this very simple keyframes, which goes from display none to the implicit inherited value. And we animate that over 2 steps. So the only thing I can think of is that we need maybe, what do they call it? Like I forget what it's called in CSS animations. They have like the fill keyword or whatever for like which way it extends, whether it's forward, backwards, or something like that. Not that's direction, but yeah. So like whether you take the beginning state or the end state of the animation as when the animation is not running.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure it's. I may try to take a look after this call, but I'm pretty sure this is a kind of issue we may not even see in dev mode. So we may need to rebuild the website before.
Oh, fantastic! That's fun.
I'm not sure, but sometimes it's tricky in dev mode to see such issues. So.
Yeah.
But yeah, I not something I was aware personally, so maybe I can take a look after this call. Maybe we can find some lead. Maybe we can fix it. It'd be nice. Making a Firefox.
Yeah, I don't know if slowing down no, but Firefox doesn't have the same.
You cannot
CPU
slow down in Firefox, I think.
No, you can only slow down
network, right?
the network.
Yeah,
I think that's right.
At least that's the only thing I know. But I'm not a huge Firefox user, so maybe totally wrong on that.
Yeah, no, their performance options have a bunch of like what to record, but not a way to just simulate slower CPU, as far as I can tell.
Well, I'm taking note of the issue, adding that to my list. At some point I have some free time, or maybe it's too hot in the middle of the night. I have something to look at.
Something to put you back to sleep?
Yeah, or maybe some tailwinds, so but maybe that gives you nightmares.
Oh boy, nightmares.
Oh my goodness, my goodness. Okay. Yeah, so great. That's the only of our docs issues that is categorized as a bug right now.
Yeah, I think so.
Um,
Yeah.
which is also something interesting, about maintaining docs is that it's not just all about deciding the content to go in there. It's maintaining the docs site, which is an Astro site, which, can have any number of bugs and issues and complications as any Astro site does. So if you're ever looking to get involved and help with docs issues, sometimes there's stuff like this. Radio, if you want to navigate just to our list of issues in docs, just the generic issues, you can see we are pretty good about doing a lot of triage, and I'm often really good about adding things like help wanted and good first issue. So you can just see by the scan there that there are lots of these issues. That are labeled even good first issues. And by the time they're labeled good first issues, many of them, I've even said, like, please add this at this line. There's often they're very directed for you so that you know what you can get involved with. So maybe that's a good thing to end this on is just talk about that there are lots of issues that people can feel free to jump in on. If it says help wanted, that means it's not complete. We don't assign issues. You don't have to ask if you want to jump on an issue. I mean, look to see if someone else has created a PR for that issue first. But otherwise, there's lots here that people can choose to get involved with. Not all of them are good first issues, which is why we also have the help wanted tag. A help wanted means anyone from the community, jump in. We would like some help. Anyone is welcome to run with them. And some of them are smaller and good first issues. So even though they're ones that some of us could just really easily do, we would rather leave them for people to get some experience contributing to the docs in a relatively straightforward way where the solution is known and it's very clear what the fix is. We tend to leave them open, even if they're small things, so that people can take one of these as their first issue and get comfortable contributing to the docs repo. Maybe you've never even contributed to open source before. We just want to make sure that these are open. So this is not us being lazy by leaving lots of little tiny, relatively straightforward, simple tasks. This is part of how we get you. This is our goal, is we want other people to be able to eventually make more and more and more complicated, more complex contributions to docs. So we've got to leave some stuff that's more simple for you to get started with. And that's what we do. So anything in this bucket that says help wanted is fair game. Anyone can feel empowered to take one of these and run with them. All right, we have Chris on the call. We have Jan on the call. We have more core members like Fryuni on the call. Does anyone need any of these last few minutes to share something with the group, to ask for help or something? Um, anything last minute people want to mention before we get off this call? Okay,
Chris is
looking
looking at something.
at, is this a support thread, I think?
Maybe.
Okay.
Oh yes, I think it's the same issue Emma hit. It's I would guess it's just because they have explicitly types. I think I have an example somewhere of what they need to add. We can take a look in the Starlight repo. I think they need to update their types to be No, it's an example. I think Emma had the
This
same
setting for
issue.
types, having an explicit module in types is generally a bad idea, right? Like the much should be another option.
I think they need to, because when you types, I think they need this
You
include.
exclude everything else.
So do they have an exclude in there? Let me.
I don't see an exclude. I just see, yeah, it's just types. But types opts you out of lots of discovery.
Yeah,
I mean, I know
yeah,
it opts you out of the at types discovery.
yeah.
I'm
So
not
I
sure. Whatever. I just always
think they
avoid it.
need this include at least, but in this case, I guess just copying the include and exclude should be enough.
Yeah. You can also double check what a default. Let me have a recently spun up create Astro.
I
Cat
think I had the same
is
issue.
config. It looks exactly like this, pretty much the default one that the Astro ships with.
Oh, I don't remember which plugin that was.
All right. Yeah. So anyway, this was my guess. I asked them about
Oh
the
no,
TS config.
I know where this
And,
is. It's a closed issue in the Starlight report by Emma, probably. Yeah, can't import Starlight types. And do they share an example of their TS config? Oh no, they had it's a bit different. It was in the Biome website. They had an include, which was only SRC. So
and not the .astro. Yeah.
yeah, not the .astro or anything else. But it, in the end, pretty much gave the same issue. Starlight root does not exist. So I guess in this case, it's just because they have types and it's opt out, like you said, I guess.
And maybe just adding include would be enough.
But I guess if you had the include, you want the exclude. Otherwise, you get this with the star star dot star. So yeah, I guess these two lines should be enough.
Okay, I replied, and we'll see.
Hopefully,
we'll see what they say.
Hopefully, this is the correct solution. But I would guess this is because I know types.
It's quite unusual to see someone. I guess they had an existing repo with existing TS config and stuff, and then they've added the site, and you don't see that so often that people didn't use create Astro to.
I do that in all my
out.
website, but I know for every one of them, because I extend not from Astro but from my own. I have a shared config, but I know every time. For example, if I check, did I not open the blog? Yeah, if I check the blog repo. Yeah, so I extend from my own config, which already exclude this, and I just include whatever I want. So I think we should.
And this is also a mono repo, so that's part of it.
So I guess we should fix it, hopefully.
Cool.
Perfect.
There you go, some support for talking and docking.
Support call, talking and docking, everything at the same time. But yeah, I think that may be it. Yeah, we do it all. Except if anyone has, like Sarah said, anything extra they want to share, to mention.
Sounds like we are good then.
Yeah.
Lots of Starlight stuff today. Lots of CSS. If you can't tell when to CSS, then lots of CSS today. Lots of styling today. Yeah, so thanks everybody for joining us. I think Heideo has some great feedback on the
Oh yeah,
PR. Make
super
sure
helpful.
that you have dropped in and left a comment, and go enjoy playing with 5.11. Everybody go
Ooh,
update, because it is out and it is live. We will be I think I just checked in the background and I think they're working on the social media posts and the blog post right now. So that'll be out soon.
Amazing.
So that's it
nice.
for another week of talking and docking. If no one has anything else to share, otherwise, we will let everyone go. We will get back to doing some work behind the scenes, and we will, in all likelihood, see you next week. I don't think there's a TBD scheduled for this week. I think talking before deploying is scheduled for next week. Yeah, just checking the calendar.
I think so.
So, but our support squad did have a call yesterday, where they went through support threads on a call. So, sort of inspired by these, we've started doing more and more streams. Mostly thank you to Heideo, who has figured out a lot of our AV process behind all of this. So, yeah, make sure you check the Discord events, because we do post those there, and you will see calls going on, and you will see us working on docs. You will see the platform team describing new features or just working on them. And now you will see support squad and support patrol going through support threads and just figuring this all out together. It did go reasonably well. Yes, it did. Okay, so have a great rest of the week, weekend, and Team Docs. We'll see you later and around the Discord. As usual, I will put myself on mute. I will wait for everyone to leave so I can end the event. And because the YouTube stream is usually about 30 seconds behind, that means there will be some awkward silence as I wait for YouTube to catch up before I stop that stream. But thanks for joining us. This is always more fun to do it together. Comment on the PRs, look for help wanted issues, and get credits towards your Astro badge. And we will see you later. Thanks, everyone.
Bye everyone.
Bye.